Okay, I'm chilling today at Dad's house. I got into town yesterday and I went straight to my brother's house and talked about all the stuff that shook loose during my road trip and the things that now I know I want to completely overhaul in there, both for my comfort and the durability and aesthetics of the entire unit. So, the first and easiest thing for me is going to be the upholstery because that's where I have the most experience. And I totally lucked out because they used a light duty staple here. It's coming out. I don't even need tools. You know what I mean? I can just pull it out by hand. So it's going to be easy. I already have the first one done. But I wanted to show you something about upholstery since we're doing it. In case you ever want to try something like this yourself on a budget and you have even a little bit of skill available, you can do this. Okay, so besides just, they used, how long are those staples? See if there's one intact. I don't know, it's probably like, I don't know, it's bigger than a quarter. I'm not gonna math. But once you get it pulled off, okay, see how they have the whole board is fabric wrapped? That's a totally acceptable way to do it. A way to get your fabric to move smoothly and stretch across as you're upholstering or whatever. We're going to do it a little bit differently since I'm going to make a stuffed cushion that's held on with Velcro. But just so you can see. Now, in an upholstery shop, what they would do is they would use plastic for that. I think they used the white, this looks like they used sheets, old sheets, and just cut them to fit so that the, you don't see the texture and all that stuff of the cushion. It gives this another layer of softness and everything and makes your pattern and your color show up nice if you want to try and get by with a lower grade fabric like this. You do kind of need a backing or something, because if that is just around the foam, you can kind of see it and it's going to always look sort of dingy and weird. You know what I mean? These little things make a difference, but can be done really easily on a budget. And lucky me, they didn't use glue or anything to adhere the foam to the wood. So the other one it just popped right out once I had those staples pulled out and the fabric pulled off. So same deal with this one. Now I can just ditch that wood altogether, because since I'm doing it my way, I'm going to reuse the foam instead of buying new. And I went and purchased 2-inch foam, and I will use the Elmer's spray adhesive. You can buy it at any craft store, really. I think it's Elmer's, might be 3M, but I'll show some of that when I go to do it. And I will glue another layer of foam on top of this once it's cut to fit. And then I'll wrap it similarly to put it into the case when I have it made. And we'll go over a little bit of that. But this is actually going to work out really cool, really inexpensive, and a pretty manageable thing for just about darn anybody. And then my brother and I are going to do the construction type overhauls together, and he's going to talk to my nephew today and see if maybe we can get some leaf springs or something put onto the trailer itself so it has a little bit better ride. But yeehaw, we're on it today. So this is the foam. I got just what they had in stock at the Hobby Lobby. 2 by 27 by 76. Okay, that's going to be enough to get. Gosh, I might get the whole one half of the dinette. I'll need a second bag for the other dinette set, or the other side of it. But I double checked my measurements of this foam, and I've got it measured. If I had the tools available, there are foam cutters, but since this is only 2 inches, I have, like heavy duty shop shears, and I'll just cut it that way. I'll be able to, but it's gonna like, it's really gonna kill my hand. You can actually use like an electric carver out of your kitchen to cut this stuff too. You get kind of jagged edges, but when I go to fill it, I'm just gonna put a layer of batting around the corners to take up any weirdness or strangeness in the cuts anyway. This is the stuff that I was talking about that you can use to put these layers of foam together. I think they even make one that's specifically for foam, but this stuff works. I've used it on the furniture, like in the house, and stuff I've had before that I no longer have. But you can see how rough my scissor cut was. Okay, whatever. The thing about this stuff is it does stretch a little bit. So I started from the center. The center is already tacked down and drying, and then I'll you know, do the edges heading outwards, because then I can kind of stretch it to fit against the edge snugly and take up all of the gap there. You see, it'll stretch right out and fit there. So once that center is held down, then I can work on that as I go all the way around it. And since I had one smooth edge on the foam, that'll of course end up being the front of the cushion. So that's the kind of stuff I'm taking note of now. So I picked like what was the prettiest side of the cushion itself, and you know, and match them up so that it'll be the easiest one to just take a light layer of, like, it's like quilt batting, you know, anything like that is going to work to fill in any remaining gaps and make that really smooth. And I talked about in one of the earlier videos about rehabbing this little thing, how this was too short for me. I felt kind of short at the table and my booty bottomed right out. So rather than buy all new high density foam, getting this was a much cheaper option and will still accomplish what I want, because when I make my case now, because this compresses so much, I'll make my case the dimensions that I want this to compress down to, and then when I wrap it with that plastic before I stuff it in, it will automatically give me like that higher density. I don't know how else to explain it, because you know I like suck at the talking. But yeah, we're making some major progress and this is going to work out really nicely. The other thing was where I was saying, like, isn't it weird that this seating sticks out into the doorway? That was the other thing about the way that they upholstered it. When I took it off, the wood actually was cut to fit properly, but without having something to tighten all of this down, they let it expand to its full size. And to get good upholstered results, the way that you create that density and firmness is by forcing this to compress inside of whatever you make. So the dimensions of the actual seat, the actual bench, are 38 by 24. And I figured that was it, but this whole thing, the way it was upholstered, is 41 by I don't know. I don't remember, but because they didn't allow for that compression to happen the way that they upholstered it. And that's why it just felt so weird, and it was taking up too much room. By doing it this way, it's going to get the proper compression, and it's going to, I didn't even need to adjust the size of the foam at all, because, you know, even though it's much bigger than the bench seat, once I have it in there, it's going to fit. So I guess what I'm trying to say is your foam always needs to be actually larger than the surface that's being upholstered. You want about an inch all the way around, minimum, so that when it's inside of its case or its upholstery, it compresses down to fit, but you end up with a nice little soft lip all the way around, so that you're not like bumping yourself or anything. And I'm sure that when you think about it and you look at the difference in upholstery and stuff like that, you'll understand what I mean there. Okay, continuing swiftly onward with our renovations. I decided to do this way to save money so that I can keep having adventures. But since it's not getting sun exposure or anything like that, it doesn't need to be super tough, and what I was using was tough enough to handle what I was doing anyway. This is strictly upgrade. So I went to the Hobby Lobby because this is 30% off Fabric Week, and I got all of the white vinyl that they had, and it's upholstery vinyl. It's not the highest quality. I could have gone to one of the companies like Sailrite or something like that, Sunbrella or someplace, and gotten heavy duty canvas or whatever, but they only had 4 yards in stock, and I think I can do the entire 11-foot camper with this 4 yards of vinyl, because when I started actually setting the pieces out and seeing what would be the best layout for what I have. I can do the entire dinette set and the back full size if I use canvas on the back. And it just so happens that I have some, this is outdoor type canvas, it's for like outdoor upholstery. So I'm going to use this for the backs of the dinette set. There's just enough that I can do the 2 larger cushions out of this. And this one was given to me by my former boyfriend's mom. We would trade fabric, and they would let me have remnants from out of their shop and stuff like that to mess with, making tote bags. And we had a little sewing class at their church, and I brought, tons of fabric I felt done with to that, and that kind of stuff. That's good community building. But I'm off to my fabric cupboard to see if I can find enough other remnants of a heavy duty enough fabric to serve as the backing, because you're never really going to see the backing. And this is so cute. Actually, it would have made a great dinette set. But I need a backing more than I need that. And the vinyl will be easy to wipe down, and then I'll be able to just throw one of my little sheets or blankets or something over it so that like your skin doesn't stick and stuff like that, because nobody wants that. But that means that I can have it all done. And the regular price of their just regular indoor outdoor upholstery vinyl there was $9.99, and then 30% off this week. You know how they do their rotational sales at Hobby Lobby. So what is that, like $27 plus the scraps, to do my back sides of everything. And oh, I got a little lost there because I'm trying to make this a quick, short, concise video. They could be reversible if I wanted them to be. But I'm on the fence right now about putting Velcro down so that they don't shift and move. So this side would end up getting Velcro sewn to it. That's probably the best option if I don't want to install snaps or something else like that to keep them in place. So they won't end up being reversible, but they totally could be. I mean, with something that cute, and maybe I can figure a way to place the Velcro that it won't matter which side is up. I don't know. I'll look at it before I sew it in. But this is going to turn out to be really fun, and oh my gosh, so much more affordable of a renovation than I imagined. So I'm cutting the back side for the seat cushions, the bottom portion of them. And this is how much I had. I had enough for each one. And on this side, there's, how many extra inches over here? There's an extra, full extra 7 inches. So what I'm going to do, because, I just mentioned that we're going to make a 1/2 inch seam allowance line for it all the way around. See, I've already done it on my vinyl piece. I'm going to do the same thing here. So when I do the zipper now, in order to use as much of this as I can so that I can save as much vinyl as possible to do the back portion of the unit with. I'm going to utilize this as one of the back panels. So I'll still have my 1/2 inch seam allowance there, but I'll only measure 5 down. You know what I mean? I'll do it just as if there was going to be another piece of fabric there. I'll show you when I get there. This is what I was trying to explain, and maybe I can do it a little bit better now that I have the visual reference. Okay, so this is our bottom fabric piece, and I measured where, if I was going to use the vinyl for the boxing all the way around, that would be my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I would have a 6 inch piece of fabric going this way across it, sewing here. So this would be my 6 inch mark. You see what I mean? I'm sorry, no, this is my 6 inch mark, and then I measured down that way. I put the line there where that, where this seam would be to make it a 5 inch box, and I'll continue that all the way down. But my zipper is going to go on the far edge here, with the right side facing out, obviously. You know what I mean? And this was another one that was in my salvage materials. It was already finished all the way around with like a stopper at the bottom, and it's a nice heavy duty one. So it'll stand up to some abuse and stuff like that, but it was salvaged off of something somewhere. I don't remember where. And since I'm doing it as if this were the back boxing, then I can go ahead and do a top stitch along here. You can see, I'm sorry I'm moving around so much, but this isn't a sewing tutorial. It's just kind of a basic how to get the most out of what you have video. See, so I folded over that 1/2 inch seam allowance where I had marked, right there. And then I lined my zipper up, and I pinned it. Since we're using canvas on this side, I was able to use pins all the way down to hold that seam allowance in place, and then place my zipper right alongside. And in some places I did pin the zipper right to the fabric so that it doesn't stretch and warp and do stuff like that. But I sewed one side first, starting from the center, moving outward. And now I'm doing this side, starting from the center, moving outward towards the corner. And that way, when we attach the back panel to it, it won't be warped. We'll be able to line it up really good. And I'll give you a basic idea of how we're doing the rest, but not a step-by-step for sewing. And let's learn some more upholstery tips. All right, so I only had the 4 yards of vinyl. That's all that was available at the store on sale today. But I was lucky. It was just enough to get the top pieces for the dinette, or the major seat cover, and then I'm going to use a different fabric to do the backrests. It was enough to get both of my top pieces for my the full size. Well, it's not even quite full size in the back. It's a total width of about 48 inches, the foam anyway. So it is quite narrow. And 78 inches long. So I got all of those tops cut, but this is all I had left to do the boxing all the way around. And I want the seat cushions, there's one of them right there, to be boxed all the way around. And if you've never heard that term before, I'm going to show you what that is when we get to the sewing part. But basically it's like that strip that goes all the way around. Instead of being just folded in the corners, we're going to stitch the whole shape out, and that way it'll sit really nicely, hold its shape. It's going to be really good. And since we've added 2 inches to that foam, but what we want is to end up with a 5-inch higher density. Um, all of the magic in upholstery happens by cutting your pattern pieces to the exact measurements of the foam. And then by the time you make your seam allowance all the way around, you know, because I'm gonna give myself a 1/2 inch seam allowance in upholstery. Not you would do like a 1/4 of an inch if it's your home sewing or making a skirt or something at home, but in upholstery you want to give yourself a lot more to work with, for just a lot of reasons. But the great thing about having vinyl is we're not going to have to worry about raw edges or anything like that. But once it's cut, I will go ahead and I will measure and make sure that I have a nice straight line around there. And, you know, I've already started like marking everywhere to line up, because we'll have to make sure that we have even stretch all the way around, because there is a little bit of give and stretch in vinyl. But I have to do this very carefully, because I'm going to be cutting it within inches of having enough to do the entire thing. And if, you know, the challenge is that I want to get it done with just what I have here now and the addition of the vinyl. And the cushions in the back, I still need to keep the wood back there because it is the base for the bed. And it doesn't have an additional piece of wood underneath of it like the dinette set does. So that's going to be upholstered right to the wood. So I want to make sure that, just to have it look nice, that I have at least one long continuous piece for the front of each cushion, because those are one continuous cushion, whereas the dinette is 4 cushions put together, so it's all much shorter pieces. And if I want it to look tidy, having one continuous strip along the front will look really nice. And I have at least enough to do the fronts right now, but I'm not quite sure about having enough to do the sides of the cushions yet, because where it needs to be upholstered, I need more than 6 inches, because even though my foam is only 5 inches, when I go to upholster it, you have to have something to hold on to. And so I want at least 7 inches or more. So I've got a couple inches to work with and pull, so that as I go, I can get it stretched evenly, but get proper compression on the foam. When I get to doing that, I'm going to have my brother or my nephew help me with that, because I don't have the strength in my wrist anymore to do it. You can see that I messed up pretty badly a couple years ago, and any kind of like tension on it will just pop it right back out. Just all the measuring and cutting and stuff today popped it way back out, and it's giving me some issues. But I can do all the sewing part today and have it done. Bear with me on the poor lighting here, but yeah, a bunch of stuff got moved in here. So this is what I meant, okay? That has been stitched to the front side of this fabric. Now with the right sides together, this is my back piece and my front piece. And I'm going to sew this right along there. That's my 1/2 inch seam allowance, and see, it'll line up just like that. But we don't ever want to put pins in our vinyl and make any unnecessary holes. So I use these binder clips when I'm working with any kind of vinyl or anything like that you don't want to put extra holes in. And they work great. And I've seen some of the older seamstresses who are really experienced and stuff be able to hold their tension really well and just hold it in place as they go. And they don't even need the markings anymore, you know, because they can guesstimate and go by the lines on their machine really well. But I still like having a guide and some extra support. So I went ahead and I pinned it all the way down. So now when I run it through my machine, I'll just make that 3/8, you know, and I've cut to a 1/2. And so when we fold it back over, the zipper is going to be almost invisible in the back. And then when we do our boxing around the front, we'll go just a little bit over the corner, you know, around the corner a little bit, and it'll tuck that raw edge right in if we have enough extra, and I'm pretty sure that we do. I'm pretty sure this is going to work out better than I even anticipated, so fingers crossed. Let's make it go like this. See? So now when it is sitting on its back, the zipper will just kind of disappear right there into the seam in the back, because it'll sit flat like this. Oh, I've got a few stray threads to cut off, but you know, that'll be sitting on the bottom. So just a little more to go. So now that the zipper is installed completely and the top vinyl half is sewn all the way along that edge, now I'm going to go along and clip my 6-inch boxing all the way around. And it worked out really well because you know, I had all those short strips left, and I wanted to keep the one long strip for the front of the upholstered pieces. So I did. It worked out just perfectly to have it seam in the middle, 2 of them together, and then I top stitched it so that it would just kind of look nice and it'll lay nice. And when I top stitch, I like to put something on the back to keep it kind of even, so that you don't have the seam pop open either once it starts getting stressed, and you know, you sit on it a lot and it's gonna expand and contract and move around and stuff like that. And having a backing behind your top stitching is gonna keep it nice and flat, and it keeps those edges even, you know what I mean? And it's not going to pull apart at that seam because now there's 3 lines of stitching. So once I get this side sewn all the way around the top, all the way around there, then I'll go again and I'll find this nice center with right sides together still, and I'll mark it, I'll line it up to my marking. So it's actually working out well that I've got seams in this, because then I can line up my marking there and make a few extra marks here to make sure that my vinyl top piece lines up with this really well. And I'll go all the way from the center front around the sides to the back. And we should have just enough that when we get to the back here, we'll be able to take it up and square it off right there. It'll like turn into a little square right there. It's going to be awesome. Here's another quick little tip I can give you. Okay, so I'm following my 1/2-inch seam allowance with the guide on my machine, and just running this one continuous strip of boxing all along. Now, as I approach the corners, I don't want to do it completely square, or it's going to look a little bit weird. So I marked on the other side how I'm going to round it off just a little bit, but I'm good enough that I can eyeball it. But I don't want it to stretch too much and warp too much. But now that I'm right here near that corner, what I can do to avoid that is, okay, I'm going to lay it flat right there. And I'm just going to make a little clip with my scissors right there in the corner. Maybe one right there too. So that as I stitch around here, I can kind of turn into this stitch, and the vinyl's going to stretch without ripping or anything like that. I only need just a tiny slit. Here, I'll do it real quick, just a second. Okay, so I've made just a couple of little slits there, so that now when I start to get into that corner, that's going to curve around my corner just fine. When I get there, if I need to get in there and make one of those slits a little bigger to help it move correctly, I can. I have a smaller pair of scissors. They're just not right here handy, and I'm not using my tripod for this. I'm just doing it on the fly. But that's how you get around a corner like that and do a very small curve without having to box or to, you know, get super, super fancy. So now that I've gotten around it, you can see what I mean without me even having to pull it out from the machine. See what I mean? As I turned that corner and made that slightly rounded, the slits, just those little bit of slits, gave it enough movement and stretch for me to go right around that corner and make it just slightly rounded so I don't have a weird point in there. And then once I have this seam done, I'll just clip that a little bit so that it lays really nicely into the side. So this is the final step. I've sewn my boxing all the way around. I think I misspoke in the last clip, but whatever. So you can see I've sewn all the way around, and then we have this weird stuff going on at the back. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to fold this back out of my way, and that will get sewn center to center there, and then all the way around again. And then over here in these corners, now that I have this done, the way this will work is I will fold this over, because now I know how much I have to work with. And I'll make a straight line even with the back of that, and then I'll bring that over and sew that from there to there up to here, and bring this around the other boxing around to meet. So this will be actually the last seam that we make. This one right here will be the very last one that we make, because if we have to do a little pinch or a little tuck or something there, we'll have all of this extra to work with. So I'll make the line, but I probably won't actually cut it until I get this other part sewn on completely. So this is what I mean on the next bit. Now, the other side is done. I'm getting ready to do this, and I've lined my center seam up with the center of this one long piece, and I'll go all the way around here, but I'm going to sew from this center towards this corner and just slightly round out my stitch when I get to the corner. And then I'll come from here, from this side, where I've also got my center marked, and I've made sure that that's lined up with the center of this piece, so that it's going to hold a nice shape when it's in place, so long as my fabrics all line up with their markings. And then I'll work really slowly, because this doesn't like to feed through a regular machine really evenly either. But that's kind of to your advantage if you want to do something like this and take your time with it and make it kind of nice. Just take your time to evenly feed it and take up a little bit of slack in the corner there. You know what I mean? Any strangenesses, you'll be able to push them through by hand and get them all out. And then we'll come back, and our last bit, we'll do a seam starting from the center heading towards the back where the zipper is, but we'll stop right there at that line. And that'll end up being a perfect little square. But we've saved so much fabric by doing this one fold over and the rest cut to the exact measurements. So because this one is small enough, I was checking it out and feeling out the foam and testing my fabric, and I think that I can slip the cover on starting by, it's inside out. So all I have to do is get those corners lined up really well and then shimmy it down. If it were any bigger than this, I would need help, and I would need probably a plastic wrap to slip it in there and get it compressed down myself. And I was talking earlier about taking up the, like the gap here in between where the foam is bonded together. So all along the front, I did some of this. It's just quilt batting scraps that I had and just kind of filled it in. On the sides, I'm not really going to worry about it because the vinyl is going to be really forgiving. And it should be tight enough that it will, like, it'll take a little while, but it'll naturally come to rest, pretty smoothly. And if I'm not satisfied with the look of it, it'll only take me a minute to put some batting down the side of it until it smooths out and I like it. Okay. So this is kind of the final reveal on the first cushion. Kind of, just not installed, but that'll be a one big reveal, but I'll show one of each of these style of cushions as I go. So when this is sitting down, and I want the white vinyl side up, this area where the zipper is where the backrest will sit. So that's going to cover all of that. And I'll be able to flip it over if I want and use that. Nice vinyl smack on wood floor. And use that sometimes if I want to. And I think that the vinyl's got enough grip to hold it steady. I don't know, it might mess it up. I'll probably leave that canvas side down against the wood most of the time, even though it is painted and stuff. Or maybe, put a little pad under there or something. I don't know. But we ran into our first major whoopsie. I took all the time. I got my seams so nice. I'm not going to redo it, but, at the top of a zipper, you need a stopper to hold the ends together so your zipper just doesn't fly off. And I was working so hard to compress everything, and I just pulled, and the zipper did fly right off. There it is. But really, the only time this one is going to come off, because it's all upholstery grade fabric, is if I need to recover it. So the zipper doesn't need to function again except to take it apart, but without anything to stop it there, it's just going to open. So if I can't get this back on, I don't want to take this whole seam out, because then I'm going to have a whole line of extra holes in my vinyl. That's a no. So I would have to either take this end out and run the zipper up here to get it lined back up, because I can't seem to get it to go back on from this side. So if I can't, then all I'll do is stitch across there by hand so that it can't come apart. And, oh man, see the veins in my hands. I've been working too much. And that's fine. That's never going to show. Never going to see that. One of these boo-boos is bound to happen. You know what I mean? But yeah, I panicked and I made a little fudge there in the process. I see now. So, it's always, there's always going to be something like that happens. But that is lamentable. I think though that, now that I'm looking at it, I think that I can manipulate that. If the zipper won't just go right back in, I think it might even almost look better for me to just manipulate that into place and do a running hand stitch right there. Because, yeah, it never has to come out until I reupholster it. And for cushion number 1, I'm extremely satisfied with that. I really like it. And the general rule of upholstery is the first one is the worst one. So that's the one that'll go on the back side that you don't see anyways. So if anything is strange about that corner, first of all, it's going to be covered by the backrest. And then at night when someone's sleeping, covered by a sheet or whatever. And it's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal to me at all. I think the front turned out pretty nice, and that's going to relax some over the next couple days. The stitches will relax and they'll sit down a little bit, but I don't want to restuff it to deal with that little problem. So I'm just going to hand stitch it. And the other one, now I am going to have to do something different in the boxing of it because I don't have another zipper that long. I've got two other kind of heavy duty ones. They should do the job. Um, they're actually better than the one that I used on that, but I'm using what I have. So what I'm gonna do something just a little bit different for those ones, or for this other cushion. But since we have most of it down and know that it's going to actually work really nicely and really smoothly and look dope, that'll be just a quick clip.